From a global murder map that paints continents in blood red, to a cannibal forum where the meal volunteered, these are some of the most disturbing websites the internet has ever produced. Some of them were taken down, some of them are still out there, got their creators sentenced to multiple lifetimes in prison. So as always, viewer discretion is advised. Here are 7 of the most disturbing websites ever to exist. Cicada 3301. Starting with the one that nobody ever actually solved, a website, or really a chain of websites, that recruited thousands of the smartest people on the internet and then vanished without ever telling any of them why. On January 4th, 2012, it appeared on 4chan's notorious message board with a few lines of text. Hello, we are looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we have devised a test. Most users assumed it was a joke. The hint, though, was right there in plain writing. There was a message hidden in the image. However, the people who took it seriously found themselves pulled into something that escalated far beyond a 4chan brain teaser. The hidden message led to another puzzle, which led to another, which led somewhere genuinely strange. Solvers were sent on a global scavenger hunt involving advanced cryptography, steganography, hiding messages inside images and sounds, and real-world treasure hunts. Posters with QR codes started appearing taped to walls in cities around the world. Warsaw, Paris, Seoul, Sydney. This was no longer a kid behind a keyboard. Whoever was running this had reach. Swedish crypto security researcher Joel Eriksson was one of the people who got hooked. Initially, I just thought it would be a nice little brain teaser, he told Fast Company. It was not a little brain teaser. The internet was quick to fill the silence with theories. A spy agency hunting for codebreakers, a hacktivist collective, a secret society, a cult. One person who solved it told Fast Company in 2014 that he'd been given access to a darknet site and put to work developing something called the Cicada Anonymous Key Escrow System. Cakes. Yes, cakes. And here's the part that keeps people up at night. Much about Cicada 3301, including who posted the puzzles, remains a mystery. New puzzles appeared in 2013 and 2014, and then they simply stopped. More than a decade later, nobody has conclusively proven who created it or what its real purpose was. A final encrypted book, the Liber Primus, still sits half unsolved. What makes Cicada so unsettling isn't gore, it's the opposite. Large parts of it were verifiably real. Photographs from multiple cities, clues independently confirmed by strangers who'd never met. The whole thing worked perfectly, recruited its winners, and then dissolved without ever explaining itself. The Nightmare Machine. The Nightmare Machine was built by researchers at the MIT Media Lab around Halloween of 2016, and the premise was simple and a little sinister. Teach an artificial intelligence what frightens humans, then point it at the world. The team trained the algorithm on thousands of horror images until it had absorbed a working theory of human fear. Then they fed it photographs of ordinary, even beloved places, Stonehenge, the Statue of Liberty, and asked it to make them terrifying. The results were melting faces, shadow-drowned landscapes, and skies that looked like they were breathing. The cruelest section was the Haunted Faces Gallery, where the AI warped normal portraits into something you could almost still recognize as a person, which is precisely what made it worse. When it launched, it went viral overnight. People flooded social media with their own AI-generated nightmares. The internet's reaction was split between delight and genuine unease. One of those rare cases where the crowd couldn't decide whether it was a toy or a window into something it shouldn't have opened. As it turned out, curiosity outlasted the fear. The novelty wore off, and the project was eventually shut down in 2023. But the idea lingers in a way the images don't. A machine with no concept of death learned to imitate our terror of it well enough to make millions of strangers flinch. Whether that's a clever art project or a small preview of something larger is the part nobody quite agreed on. Silk Road. Following the polite academic creepiness of a research lab, the internet's darkness turns commercial. Because if you've ever heard whispers about the dark web, you've almost certainly heard about the Silk Road. Silk Road was the first modern darknet market, created and operated by Ross Ulbricht from 2011 until his arrest in 2013. Ulbricht ran it under the alias Dread Pirate Roberts, a reference to a character in the 1987 film The Princess Bride. The site looked like any tidy e-commerce storefront, except instead of books and gadgets, vendors were selling cocaine, heroin, LSD, hacking tools, and forged passports. Prosecutors said the site moved more than $200 million worth of drugs anonymously. Payment was in Bitcoin, which at the time was new and effectively untraceable. However, the empire came undone over something almost embarrassingly small. Among Ulbricht's online handles was Altoid. In the early days, trying to drum up interest, he'd posted about Silk Road on a Bitcoin forum under that name. Later, he used the same handle in a post seeking a programmer and attached an email address with his real name in it. Years later, an investigator connected those threads. Ulbricht was arrested in a San Francisco public library, caught with his laptop open and logged in as the site's administrator, the one piece of evidence the defense could never explain away. Even his downfall is contested. Prosecutors said Ulbricht had solicited 6 murders for hire, one targeting a former employee, though they acknowledged no evidence existed that any killing was actually carried out. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole in 2015. The judge told him plainly, "You are no better a person than any other drug dealer." The internet split hard down the middle. To some, he was a kingpin who profited off addiction. To others, particularly libertarians who rallied for years under the banner Free Ross, the life sentence was monstrous government overreach against a non-violent first-time offender. And then the loop closed in the most unexpected way. On January 21st, 2025, on his second day back in office, President Donald Trump granted Ulbricht a full and unconditional pardon. Trump called the sentence ridiculous. Ulbricht posted a video thanking him, saying simply that he was a free man now. The man who built the internet's most infamous black market walked out a free citizen, proving perhaps that the dark web's strangest twist was never technical at all. Cannibal Cafe. Coincidentally, it also takes only a single internet post to end a life, which brings us to a forum where the victim wrote his own invitation. The Cannibal Cafe was, on paper, a discussion forum for people with a very specific and extreme fetish, fantasies of eating or being eaten. The unspoken rule, supposedly, was that it stayed fantasy. But a German computer repair technician named Armin Meiwes wasn't interested in fantasy. On the forum, Meiwes posted an advertisement for a well-built man, 18 to 30, who would like to be eaten. After several people backed out, one man, 43-year-old Bernd Brandes, answered, and he was not looking for a roleplay. He genuinely wanted to be slaughtered and eaten. The two men talked for a few days and agreed to meet on March 9, 2001, at Meiwes' house near Rothenburg, Germany. What happened there is too gruesome to detail, but it ended exactly as both men intended. Brandes drank a bottle of cold medicine to lose consciousness, and Meiwes captured the entire killing on video. Over the following months, Meiwes ate his body. When his supply ran out, he went back to the forum to post about the experience and look for another volunteer. That's when other users realized the fantasy community had produced something real, and the police came instead. The trial made legal history precisely because the German courts didn't know what to call it. In 2004, a state court convicted Meiwes of manslaughter and sentenced him to 8.5 years, ruling he had no base motives. Prosecutors were furious. A federal court agreed the conviction was too lenient and ordered a retrial. In 2006, after that retrial, Meiwes was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. In court, Meiwes was unnervingly composed. He described the act as being like taking communion, saying that with every piece of flesh he ate, he remembered his victim. The case so disturbed Germany that years later, Meiwes' half-timbered house, the scene of the crime, was demolished. The forum is gone too, but the unsettling fact it exposed remains. Somewhere out there, people were writing each other these invitations, and at least one was accepted. Gorgish and the shock sites. But while Cannibal Cafe at least pretended to be fantasy, this next corner of the internet trades in the genuinely real and asks you to watch. Shock sites are nearly as old as the web itself, and Gorgish is among the last big ones still standing. After older sites like LiveLeak and Best Gore were shut down, it became the destination for footage no mainstream platform would ever allow. Crime scenes, accidents, war zone clips, death captured raw and unfiltered. What makes it disturbing isn't only the content, it's the community. Thousands of users from around the world post, comment, and react to material most people couldn't stomach for a second, discussing death and violence with a casual fluency that feels almost more alarming than the videos themselves. The most common warning from people who've spent time there isn't about any single clip. It's about how quickly the horror stops registering. There are accounts of people who clicked once out of curiosity and couldn't stop scrolling. One who said that after a week of browsing, the clips started showing up in their dreams. Sites like this have also drawn law enforcement attention for a darker reason. Extremist groups have used them to spread violent propaganda. So why do people go? Probably the same reflex that makes traffic slow to a crawl at a crash, the same pull behind a 2 a.m. True crime binge. The genuinely chilling part isn't on the screen at all. It's the realization that the appetite is ours, and that it seems to grow the more you feed it. 4chan. Much like a shock site desensitizes one viewer at a time, this next site industrialized the process and accidentally became one of the most influential places on the internet. 4chan was created in 2003 by a 15-year-old as an image board for discussing Japanese anime. What it became is something its founder could never have predicted. It practically invented modern meme culture. Rickrolling, lolcats, Pepe the Frog all trace back to its boards. And because it required no account and no real name, it gave people total anonymity to say and post anything at all. That freedom cut both ways. Over the years, 4chan users were tied to real-world events that blurred trolling and crime, hacking a sitting governor's email, launching coordinated protests against the Church of Scientology, and fueling harassment campaigns that targeted women in the games industry. However, what seemed like edgy humor on the surface curdled into something genuinely dangerous behind the scenes. The site has long hosted not just memes but illegal content, hate speech, harassment campaigns, and was a birthplace of the radicalizing QAnon conspiracy theory. Several mass shooters referenced 4chan threads in their manifestos. In one near-tragic case, a young man announced a suicide attempt on the board and streamed it. While a handful of users begged him to stop, others egged him on and treated it as entertainment. Emergency responders reached him in time. The internet has tried to kill 4chan for 2 decades: bans, investigations, public outcry, a major hack leaking moderator names and user IPs. None of it has worked. It survives every scandal, which is exactly what makes it so unnerving. As one common description goes, it's the internet's monster, created by us, fed by us, and impossible to fully control. No limits fun. And while 4chan's worst moments were committed by anonymous crowds, this final site was the work of one man, and it remains the darkest entry on this list for a reason. Before he became the most infamous name on the dark web, Peter Scully looked entirely ordinary. Born in Melbourne, Australia in 1963, he married, had 2 children, and lived an outwardly normal suburban life. However, that facade collapsed in stages. In 2011, Scully fled to the Philippines before he could be charged in a property scheme that cost investors over $2.5 million Australian dollars. What he did there was incomparably worse. He operated a dark website called No Limits Fun, where he produced and sold a film, Daisy's Destruction, for up to $10,000 US. The content involved the abuse of children, including an infant. The cruelty was so extreme that, as investigators have said, many believed the video was just a myth. The way he found his victims is its own horror. He told impoverished families he would provide their children with food and education, then subjected them to abuse he filmed and sold. The verdict here needs no crowdsourcing. The Daisy videos triggered an international investigation, beginning with the Dutch authorities, who worked to locate the victims. Scully was tracked to Malaybalay City and arrested on February 20th, 2015. Investigators rescued the primary victims, who were found alive. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in June 2018. Then in November 2022, he received a second conviction and an additional 129 years. Prosecutors asked the Philippines to reinstate the death penalty specifically for him, in a country that abolished it in 2006. A UN expert on child abuse investigations described his case as one of the worst she had ever heard of. There's no irony to land here, no clever button. Scully sits at the bottom of every darkest website list because he represents the thing the whole genre dances around without saying, that the most disturbing corners of the internet aren't haunted by ghosts or AI or urban legends. They're built by people, and the only real protection any of us has is the same advice that closes out every story like this one. When you hear about a site that promises no limits, the smartest thing you can do is keep scrolling.